Today I want to talk to you about 3 of the most common diseases you're likely to find on your tomato plants. And if you do, don't feel bad. It happens to everybody. In fact, it happened to me. And I have 3 of those to talk to you about right now. Now the good news is I do have one of my 4 plants in this bed that's very healthy. It's a Cherokee Purple and it looks really good. So I've got that going for me. But here's some I want to talk to you about. This is called bacterial wilt. And as you see, it's relatively green, but very wilty, and that's what happens. And usually it starts at the base of the plant and it works its way up. Now, how does this plant get this disease? Well, there are pathogens in the soil that can find a way into the plant through a wound. Maybe it's a nematode, or maybe it's something you did when you were transplanting it to damage the roots. But one way or another, they can find their way in. And when they do, they cut off the opportunity for water to be transported up through the plant. And that's where the wilt comes from. Now, early on, it starts at the bottom, and you may find recovery by nighttime when it cools down and it's had a chance to rehydrate. Maybe it perks back up. But by the morning or early in the morning, it starts to wilt again. It's a losing battle, and there's nothing that you can do about it at this point. Unfortunately, the pathogens are in the soil, you can't cure it, and there's nothing you can do to prevent it other than rotating your plants out of the same spot for at least 3 years. With a little luck, maybe you can starve out the pathogen and then plant back in here, whether it's tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, or potatoes. Those are all in the same family and they're all susceptible to the same diseases. But by depriving the pathogens of that for a period of time, that's your best chance of being able to come back to this spot eventually and have a plant that's healthy. So that's bacterial wilt. Let's move on to this one. This has early blight. And early blight is very common. Now, this is an airborne disease, although it can live in the soil. Generally, you get this from diseases that are, or pathogens that are flying through the air and landing on your plant. And that can happen just by random acts of the pathogen blowing through the wind, or it can come in contact with your hands or your shoes or something else. There are a lot of ways that your plant can be affected, and that's why it's so common. But what you're going to find typically with early blight is early in the season. It's one of the first diseases you're likely to find, and it starts at the bottom of the plant and moves its way up. As you can see here, I've got it down in the bottom, and usually it's a lesion, kind of like a target. I don't know if I can find one here right now, but here you go. So see that target right here? That's really the starting point of what it generally looks like, and then it forms that yellow shading around it, and then eventually it goes brown. Now what you can do for maintenance is to cut this out. When you see it, as soon as you see it, go ahead and take your scissors, and in fact it's a good idea to sterilize your pruners or your scissors, whatever you're using to cut. I use alcohol, and then I know that anything that might have been transported on my blades is now dead. So I can go in here and I can cut out back to the base of the main stem. Take that out of there. There's no reason to leave it, and the more of this disease you remove, the better off this plant is going to be, because it's going to open it up to more light and air circulation. Now, by removing this, I'm not doing anything to cure this plant. It's not going to cure, but at the same time, it may outgrow the disease that it has. But there, again, with home gardeners, there's really not a lot of options we have for managing diseases. It really comes down to good sanitation and good quality soil, and then just some persistence on your part to keep an eye on your plants. And yet it still happens. Okay, so that's early blight. And this is one that you can leave the plant in the ground, cut out the diseased foliage, and you're probably going to be fine. And oftentimes it outgrows itself. Okay, here's one. This is called Fusarium wilt. This is another soil-borne disease. And the frustrating thing about soil-borne diseases is there really isn't anything you can do about it. What happens in Fusarium wilt is, you can see this is a Roma variety plant, but with Fusarium wilt, oftentimes it turns yellow, and it's usually on just half the plant. Now eventually it's going to take over the whole plant, but one of the ways you can identify it as Fusarium wilt is, one of its hallmark trademarks is it starts off on just half the plant. Not sure why that is, but it is. You see a lot of yellowing with Fusarium wilt, and that's the half of the plant that's got the disease currently. And then it starts to wilt. Again, it enters through the roots and it cuts off the water supply. But in this case, the foliage turns yellow too. Once again, there really isn't any cure for this. The only thing you can do is rotate away from this bed or wherever you've been planting it for at least 3 years, and hope for the best when you come back in and try it in the 4th year or beyond. But that's what I have. So I'm going to be probably cutting out what I see right here. Just even though I know that this plant is infected, I have had experience in the past by leaving it in, and then it's just kind of a race against time to see how many tomatoes I can get before the plant ultimately succumbs. And I think that's what I'm going to do here. And if that's what you want to do, go for it, and at least you'll get some tomatoes out of it, because I have quite a few on here, as you can see, and I don't want to lose those. So I'll cut out what I see and give this plant a chance to produce. I'll probably lose it, but at least I can buy some time that way. But there you go, 3 of the most common diseases you're likely to find on tomato plants. And the other thing about these diseases coming on these plants, they are particularly susceptible when it gets hot, and currently it's around the mid-90s here, and the humidity is very high. And those are 2 of the triggers that really bring on the diseases. We've had a lot of rain lately, so that's one of the times I know that I'm likely to start seeing diseases pop up, and sure enough, here they are. Good luck with your garden, and now you at least know what to expect and maybe what to do about it.